Here, one sec. Let me make sure. My name is Brandon. How are you all doing? While we wait for folks to go ahead and trickle on in here, I'm going to spend some time introducing myself and talking about what I'm going to be doing today. So, my name, like I said, is, or like it says in the bottom of the screen, is Brandon Hopkins. My main thing is running the Tech Hut YouTube channel, and what we do over there is basically anything tech. The primary focus of the YouTube channel, other than general tech stuff, is to highlight free and open source software. Now, chances are you're probably using some variation of free and open source software, but what we're going to be focusing on in this stream is free and open source software in the aspect of content curation. If we go ahead, let's jump over to the desktop here. We're going to go to the build page and then talk about some of the various challenges and whatnot that we have for this event. Now, one thing, if we go down here, we have the option to build a discourse form using Linode. If you want an example of something that you could do, that this is a perfect example. If we go over to the tutorial here, you can see this is a tutorial that I made for the discourse or for the Linode YouTube channel, setting up a discourse form on their services. It's pretty easy to do. It is a couple steps that you do have to do some stuff with mail servers and all that, but this is one of your challenges that you can go ahead and do over the course of this event. It's ending soon. I believe closing ceremonies tomorrow, if I am correct. So try to crunch as much of these in as you can. Now, the one that I'm going to actually be kind of helping you out with today is if we go down here, we have create a tutorial for your favorite Linode cloud product. Basically, with free and open source software, you already have tools at your disposal that you're going to need to do something like this. For example, if you're somebody who is familiar with video editing, photo editing, a lot of people just generally straight go to Adobe products such as Photoshop, Adobe Premiere Pro, things like that. But there are plenty of tools and options out there that are free and are really easy to use and actually feature rich, just like some of those Adobe products. So before I get too far ahead of myself, we still have some folks trickling in here. I am going to read the chat and talk to some of you guys while we get some more people in here. Hi, sir. Are you a YouTuber? Yes, I forgot to mention. This over here is my YouTube account. I'm not a developer. I'm not technically a hacker, even though I do like to kind of hack my own system when it comes to system configurations and things like that. My main thing is being an open source enthusiast and creating content around that. That is what I like to do, and that's my main thing. But no matter what you're doing, whether that be general hacking, if you're wanting to become a programmer, developer, web or sysadmin, whatever it is you want to do, having the skill set, well, at least a basic level skill set to do some video editing, some photo editing, and things like that to be able to present your work, whether that be on something like YouTube or at a company presentation, things like that are very important skills to have, especially going into the future with a lot of things being online exclusively. I like your Linux videos. Thank you so much. Open source enthusiasts. Open source contribution for Android apps, how to get started. A lot of the Android apps on, I think it's FDroid, are open source. And I believe GitHub is another sponsor. So if you go over to GitHub, you can find all kinds of different open source applications that are open sourced. And with any open source thing, you can contribute code. So you don't always get your code accepted, but you can always try to contribute over on GitHub. And contributing code to projects on GitHub is actually a really good way to build your resume long term, because especially if you're trying to get a job in development, programming, things like that, you are going to want to give them your GitHub link so they can see some of your contributions, some of the projects you've been working on, things like that. So I think we're pretty caught up on the comments. We've got some people in here. So the very first thing that I'm going to do is first, let's go to the Adobe website, because this is what a lot of people use. Adobe Creative Cloud. This is the proprietary big boys when it comes to the creative solutions for video editing, photo editing, and things like that. And one of the problems with this is it is not free. Just single applications are anywhere from $10 to $20. If you are a student, there are some discounts, but you don't even need to worry about that because the first thing we're going to be talking about is a application called Kdenlive. This is made by the folks at the KDE community. They do a lot of things with Linux, a whole bunch of different software applications, and they have a wonderful photo editor or paint tool called Krita that is fantastic as well. But what we're going to do real quick is we're going to jump into a quick instance of Kdenlive, and I'm going to be showing you how easy it is to go ahead and edit some videos. So with that, I'm going to close out a couple of these tabs. And like I said, by the way, if you're just now joining, if we go up here, we have the build a discourse form using Linode. You can use their little credit, get started, and get that completed. And some of the stuff we're going to be doing in this stream today is helping you with creating your own tutorial using a Linode product. The one thing that I'm not going to be covering is the screen recording aspect because I'm currently using the stream software and it might interfere. But if you're looking for a good screen recorder that is also free and open source, the OBS Studio project is fantastic. A lot of people think of OBS Studio as just a streaming tool, but it's a full broadcast utility. You can use it in its most simplest form, which is just adding a source of your desktop, making sure your mic sounds okay, hitting record, and it's easy as that. So with that, let's go ahead and jump into Kdenlive here. So I'm going to just, let's go through files. I'm going to open up an already existing project just so it's a little bit easier to kind of see what's going on. You can see I have a lot of different stuff going on here, not very organized. This right here, this stuff, actually, let's go into Pop Laptop. Sorry about that. This is kind of a better project because there's like a lot more going on, so I can kind of show off some of the things. Right here, cut.kdenlive, this is my project file. So let's go ahead and open this up. And like I said, this is free and open source, and I'm on Linux right now, but this definitely is not a Linux-only application. There's a download for Windows. I'm pretty sure there's a download for Mac OS, and there's obviously the Linux version here. So just like any other video editor, it follows the same kind of principle as just your standard linear video editor. Down here in the bottom, we have all of our clips. You can see I have quite a bit of cuts. Believe it or not, I don't usually do things live, so a lot of the times I like pause and stare at the camera, and I cut a lot of stuff out. But this is what the project looks like. Over here, up on the top, we have B-roll. So if you don't know just like general terminology, when you're not talking directly at the camera, that footage right here is called B-roll. And then if I'm talking at the camera, this footage is your A-roll. So a lot of the times, well, you don't need to have your face in the videos you create for the project or for the build challenge, but it's always, if you're ever making videos professionally, and you want your face attached to it, it's a good idea to put your face in it, especially if it's for like your personal channel and things like that. But if you're doing something for a company, it's probably not going to be something you do. It all just depends on what they want. So some of the basic functionality and layout, we talked about this. This is our general video timeline with where we do all of our editing. Over here we have some tools, simple cut, spacer tool, which is to move things around. Over here, this is your media project bin. So if you record something or you want to add anything to your video, you're going to be putting it in here. And we could always go up here to this button where we can click and add a clip, a title, really whatever we would like. So what we're going to do is a little demonstration because I can sit here and talk about and point at things, but it's when we actually start doing stuff is when when we get to put two and two together here. One second, I'm going to go ahead and check out chat real quick. What is the software? The software is called Kdenlive. If I go ahead and go over here, this is free and open source software. I didn't really touch too much on open source. My whole shtick and the thing that I'm most interested in, for the most part, is open source software. And for something to be free and open source, the thing that makes it so, or the reason why I like it so much versus something like the Adobe Creative Suite and a lot of the proprietary software with their code locked down is just that the code for open source software isn't locked down in a lot of the cases. So Kdenlive here, for example, if I just do GitHub Kdenlive, it's probably going to come up. So here we have the GitHub for the Kdenlive project, and we have full access to all of the code, the entire source code for the project. We could check out if there's any bugs or anything. We could contribute code to open source projects, and you can redistribute open source projects. The free does not only mean financially free, it's also free as in you're free to do whatever you want with the software. And this is one of the examples of an open source application that has a huge feature set, that it's competitive up against some of the, like, well, for individual use, like $20 a month, or for like businesses, it could be up to $1,000 a month to have some of those Adobe packages. So with that, what we're going to do is go ahead and grab my face. So right here, this right here is the A-roll, which is the footage of me talking to the camera. And just dropping it into the timeline is easy. All you do is drag and drop. And here it is in our timeline. So now I could go ahead and manipulate it, move it around, do really whatever I would like to do with it. So if you can zoom in here, you could get exact cuts. So let's say right where I stop saying whatever I'm saying here, I wanted to cut and go to something else. All we would do is grab this little razor tool, give it a cut, go to our select tool, and then that is now separated, and we can move it around, and then you could drop in different clips or really whatever you would like to do. What Linux distribution am I using? Right now this is here, for those of you familiar with Linux, let's see, do I have NeoFetch installed? Yes, I do. This is Endeavour OS. It's an Arch-based Linux distribution. The reason I generally go with Arch is because you have a lot more accessibility to software through user repositories and all that, but that's kind of off topic here. So we have our footage in. Now there's a lot you could do. Now let's say I wanted to get a picture. So right here we have a image file of something called OpenRGB. So if I go ahead and just drag and drop that over my main footage, you can see that picture comes in. Now, just having a cut like that really doesn't look too good. And this is where you can kind of start exploring some of the features and functionality of a video editor like this. So one, we have just general transitions, and one of them is a simple fade. So if I zoom way into it and kind of go over here, you can see I have a couple different handles. One, with this image, I could go in and drag it around to make it longer or shorter, depending on where I want the image to start and stop. And right here, this little tiny blue thing, if I go ahead and drag that out, that adds a fade. So now you can see I added a fade. I can go ahead and make it even longer if I'd like to. Play that, and it will slowly fade in. So this is just some super basic functionality that you could do. Of course, you could go ahead and move this picture around. It just doesn't have to be stagnant there. I'm going to go ahead and add a fade out real quick just by grabbing the other side. And let's go ahead, and if we go over here, this is where you will spend a lot of time. So under project, this is all of our media files and stuff that we just talked about. Under composition, these I'm going to get into in just a sec. Effects. This is where you're going to go ahead and manipulate photos, images, or photos, videos, or whatever you may be having that you're wanting to work with. The main thing that is really good to play around with at first is right here under transform. So if we open up transform, you have a lot of different things. Well, we have corners, you can do edge crops. So for example, if we go ahead and add an edge crop, all you do is click it, drag it, and drop it right onto the footage you want to manipulate. And then if I go ahead and click on this footage, we can see the fade in and fade out that we added. But right here is our edge crop. So let's say I didn't want this purple in this image. I could go ahead and just crop it directly in this video editor. So I don't need to open it up in another application to do this. So you can see I'm getting rid of the purple. So then theoretically, we will only have the application window available to us on screen. So just like that. And now it looks like just a normal application window. So here I'm going to read chat real quick. Maybe GitHub via sponsors. I use Arch, by the way. Yep. I was thinking of oh, how do open source projects make money? There's two main ways that open source projects make money. One, donations. A lot of people really love the software. So something like this, people donate to, and they donate a lot of money to. An example of really successful donation-driven projects, or one that I'm aware of, is a Blender. There's a lot of companies that and individuals that donate to Blender. And a lot of these open source projects get corporate sponsors, which that's where a lot of money comes in too. And another way, an example of a company that makes pretty good money with open source software is Red Hat, the server grade Linux distribution. They offer their software for free, but then in addition to that, you could get enterprise level support if you're running like a big company, and that's where they make a lot of their money, is actually providing support for their software. So back to video editing here. Let's say I wanted to move this around. I want to do more than edge cropping. That's where transform would come in. So I could go ahead and drag and drop this transform right here. And then if I go ahead and scroll down, over here is my effects bin. So if I kind of slide this out a little bit, you can see it's my effect and composition stack. Here we have size, we have our XY values, so that's the positioning on the screen. So if I go ahead and get the size, and you can input custom values. So for example, if I put in just 80, that would be 80% of the original size. Or you could go ahead and grab this slider and move it around as you see fit. Now, one thing that's really cool, and we're getting a little advanced here, is keyframes. Now, one of the reasons why a lot of people go with those expensive Adobe products, or even other like Apple products like Final Cut and things like that, is the keyframing functionality. So here, I could go ahead and add a keyframe, which a keyframe is just a point in the actual timeline or in the actual footage that it's going to remember all the effects that you see on your screen. Now, when you go ahead and set a new keyframe, so let's say we wanted to go way over here, we wanted to set a new keyframe, and we wanted this keyframe to have the image slightly larger, so maybe about there. What this is going to do is, in between these two keyframes, it's going to manipulate the footage over the timeline to the values from one keyframe to the other keyframe. So if I go ahead and play this, what it's going to do, it's going to fade in, and you can see down there the values are changing to what it says on the next keyframe. So that's just a way to have kind of live animations. So you can see that kind of come in, fade in, slow zoom, and fade out. And you see a lot of people using those effects, especially on YouTube, like Linus Tech Tips, for example. They use a lot of these different transitions and fades when they're trying to show something that's not on the screen. Yeah, so one thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to only show you one composition. There's so much into this software that if I were to dive into every single feature, this would be an 8-hour live stream, and I don't think I'm allowed to do that. If we go over here into the composition bin, these are effects, but they're going to work a little bit different. So if I go ahead and wanted to add a slide, instead of dropping it onto the actual footage, we're still dropping it onto the footage, but instead of manipulating it within the actual effect bin of the clip selected, we select the composition separately. So this slide right here, if I added that, made it a little bit shorter, we still can edit our compositions over here. So for example, this one will start out and end in the middle. So if I play this, oh, it didn't work. Bad example. I think I have to actually attach it to this. So let's go like that, because the composition needs to have two sources, if I do so remember. There we go. So yeah, that's how that works. And there's a lot of different things over here. So we have multiply, we have hue, we have divide, dissolve. So a lot of different standard video editing effects that you would see are all available on here. And I'm not going to get too advanced, but if we go under effects, we have all of our categories here. So we have a lot of different color correction, blur and sharpen, alpha masks. So if I wanted to, for example, let's say I wanted to flip this. So I'm going to put the video file on top, and I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. And let's say I want to cut myself off and put myself in the bottom corner. So we can do that. I'm actually going to do this with different footage. The image isn't the best example of that. But let's say I wanted to do it over this random video of people jogging. and I wanted my face in the bottom corner. Well, one way I could go about this, and this is something that you'd want to do if you were making like a programming tutorial or something like that, is go ahead, go over to the transform where we were, and let's add some of the things that we've added previously. So let's go ahead and add a crop. So now I can go ahead and start the cropping process. So if I crop out the bottom, crop out the right, crop out the left, you can kind of start seeing the video that's in the back there. And then what I could do is add the transition or transform tool, which then that's what will allow us to kind of move this around. And we can go ahead and manipulate in here like we've been doing, but you can see in this video footage, it actually lets us just drag this and move it wherever we want. So that's how you would get that effect that you see a lot of people do when they're making tutorials or things like that, is just go ahead and manipulate it, move it, and then play it over. So that's how you get that effect. I'm going to check out chat real quick. Hey Brandon, are you an LMHer? I'm new, but yes, I'm rather new. Why do you feel like I've seen Brandon on YouTube before? You might have. I run the Tech Hut YouTube channel. Are there any audio effect options? That is a wonderful question. You're not going to be able to hear it because I have this muted, but if we go over here and go up to, where is it, volume and dynamics, we have a couple different things. We have normalize, we have mute, volume, and fade in and fade out. In a sec though, the Kdenlive isn't the best for audio manipulation. I'm going to actually be diving into Audacity in a sec just to show you some really easy to use simple effects to go ahead and improve the quality of your audio. So we're going to be jumping into that in just a sec. I am teaching video editing. The main thing is I'm showing you certain features of some free and open source applications that are wonderful alternatives to some of the big guys, because one of your challenges over here is to create your own video tutorial of your favorite Linode Cloud product. So that is an option, and an example of something that I created is up here, build a discourse form using Linode. If you go over to the tutorial, this right here is something that I created. So if we played through this, this is with cuts, with me cutting in and out here and there, and I go over the, or I'm currently going over some of the things that I did to create that video. It's about open source content creation. Yes, it is. And like I said, this is one of the wonderful utilities right here. And you can see there's a lot I did with it earlier in this video. So we brought in B-roll, a lot of really simple edits. You don't need to get too complex to go ahead and make a good video. Simple cuts, adding things here and there like some extra footage, B-rolls, logos, graphics, stuff like that is always good. So for example, over here, let's say I just wanted to fade in a logo. For those of you who just joined, this right here is our project. So what we can do is go ahead and grab a logo of this random application. This has nothing to do with what we're doing, but this is just an example. So there we have the logo in, and then all we would need to do is go over to effects, and just like before, we would go out of audio and go to the transform and distort. Here we could go ahead and add the transform, and then you can use this to go ahead and move this around and put it wherever. And then we could do a fade in here. So if I played that, there we go. It's a little off center, but you get the general idea. There's color correction stuff as well. So if I wanted to color correct this footage right here, all I would do is close this out, go over to color and image correction. And here we have a lot of different options, actually a lot more than you probably expect. This one right here is one of my personal favorites. This edits the actual curves. So if I go ahead and move this around, you can kind of see my footage getting darker and lighter. And you could go ahead and play around with this until you get the exact look you're going for. Things like that. Overall, it's some pretty cool stuff. Now, there's a lot more. Like I said earlier, it would take absolutely forever for me to go over all these features. The main point is we're just highlighting some of these applications and what they could do for you, whether that be with work, with your personal projects, or with completing the challenge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close out of this, and we're going to move on to the next piece of software. And this one we're going to cover really quick because this is going to be the audio manipulation software, because it's something somebody asked about here. I'm going to read chat real quick. No, it's the same. Which tool should I record or use to record? I can't demonstrate it because it would mess with what I'm streaming right here. But OBS Studio, I did mention this earlier for those of you who've been here, but OBS Studio is a wonderful way to go ahead and record your screen. Has an incredibly large amount of features, but don't let that overwhelm you. Just adding a source of your desktop screen capture is more than good enough. There's a whole bunch of different tutorials, but when it comes to highlighting free and open source software, OBS Studio for general screen recording, audio recording, and even webcam recording is by far going to be the best option that you can go with. Now, with that, let's say you went through all this, you recorded your footage, but maybe your audio was too quiet, or it goes in and out, or you were leaning away from the microphone too much and it just doesn't sound that good. You could go ahead and export just the audio. So I probably should have showed that here. If we jump into Kdenlive one more time, I'm going to go ahead and open the recent project. So File, Open Recent, and then the project I was just in. If you notice your audio isn't really the best, what you can do is wait for this to open and go to Project and Render. This is how you render out your final edit. But one thing you could do before you go ahead and render out the video is if you scroll down here, you can render out audio only. So WAV is always a good format, or you could always go with MP3. Edit out just the audio so you could do some post audio work before you render out your final video. Now, what we're going to use is a wonderful program called Audacity. Audacity is another incredibly feature-rich audio manipulation software. So if I go home real quick, go into my desktop, I have a little file right here. Depending on your operating system, you could actually drag and drop whole videos into Audacity and only get the audio for manipulation. So if I go ahead and drag and drop this over, it's actually going to render with FFmpeg, which is another beautiful free and open source piece of software. But here we have our audio file. Now, at first glance of this file right here, the one thing you may notice is this is incredibly quiet. I'm not going to be able to play it back, but when you have audio files, you want it to not touch the top because that's when you get distortion and things like that, but you want it to look at least a little bit better than this. No, the same. Can we use the Xbox app if we don't have an Xbox? OBS is best. Yeah, OBS is best. So, manipulating this. Now, the best way to go ahead and get good footage, one, if you're messing with audio only, this audio, or where all these splits are, I actually went ahead and edited in the video application, but you could always go ahead, zoom in, and if you're doing audio only work, and you have big gaps like this, you could always just go ahead, drag, and hit delete. And that's how you go ahead and get that. So if you're recording audio and you could take breaths, you could pause for a couple seconds, think about what you're talking about, and then proceed. And that's how you would edit that into one smooth, clean, organic, flowing audio file. But the main thing right here, the main issue with this that we have is that volume. So to fix this, all we're going to do is click on this track, make sure it's completely selected. We're going to head over to Effect, and there's some options here. We could amplify it, which would just be a generic way to increase the volume of everything no matter what. But the best option here is the compressor. Now, I have a little glitch here that this is because of my theming. I could actually probably fix this real quick. If we go over here, appearance, this is completely unrelated to what's going on. Go arc darker so you all can see this. There we go. So with this right here, you could go ahead and manipulate this if you want to, but in general, the defaults are perfect. I'm not going to go into what every single thing here means, like the threshold, the noise floor, the ratio. That's a whole thing within itself. But for the defaults here, if you drop audio in here, you run the compressor at the defaults. It might take a sec because this is a 23 minutes worth of audio. But you can see now it went ahead and increased the volume properly to the point where the highs only touch the high point, and overall everything will sound good. It's not going to be blown out or anything. And another tip, just in case, that you could do is go to Effect and Normalize. And what this is going to do, it's going to grab some of these peaks where you might have that kind of distortion or blowout sound, and it's going to bring those down. So you can normalize peak to -1 decibel. So if there's something at the peak, it's just going to bring it down just a little bit. So if I hit that, it's going to go through. You can see it kind of just squished everything down just a little bit. So compared to what we just had, this right here is going to be a lot more usable and sound a lot better. Now, let's say, for example, we have a fan in the background or something like that. What we could do is go ahead and select an area, go to Effect, and here we have the noise removal. So noise reduction right here, and you'd go through this process. You'd get the noise profile for what we just selected, and you could go ahead and do that. Now, somebody asked, can we remove noise from audio using OBS? And yes, you can. I'm actually going to try to open it. Hopefully it doesn't do anything to the stream. If it does, if my desktop capture goes away, it'll be right back. But let's open up OBS Studio here, and it doesn't look like it's affecting anything, so that is super cool. Right here, we have our mic and auxiliary. If I go ahead and select this and go to filters, this is where you can go ahead and make your audio sound better. So for the compressor, I actually have almost the exact same values as the defaults in Audacity, except I bump up my output gain because this is kind of a quieter microphone. Here under noise suppression, this is a really good one. RN noise, this will go ahead and use AI to actually take out background noise. And limiter is always nice, so you never go beyond or go to the 0 decibel mark where you'll get those blowout sounds. So this is the best option when it comes to screen recording, especially if you're just making simple tech tutorials and things like that. I do have a couple different sources here, but the only one you really need is screen capture and maybe the video capture for webcam. It's not showing up here because the web browser is currently using that. But OBS is definitely the tool that you should go ahead and use for that. Next, we're going to talk about photo editing. So the best, well, not the best. I can't say that. That's in kind of my opinion. In my opinion, the best photo editor that is free and open source is called GIMP. It stands for the GNU Image Manipulation Program, and it is super feature rich. If you're somebody who's used to Photoshop, admittedly, this is going to be difficult to switch to because there are just things in different places. It's a little different in how things are laid out and how things work. But I'm somebody who used to use Photoshop exclusively. It took me a couple months to get used to this, but I'm really happy I did. So some of the things that you could do. I'm going to go ahead and go over to Files. I opened up, or I started an application. It's a picture of myself. It's something I used for a thumbnail in a separate video. So if I go ahead and just drag that in there, you can see it's me awkwardly smiling into the camera. If I zoom out here, you can see overall this isn't a bad shot, but this could look a lot better. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to make a copy of this so we can go ahead and see what it looks like at the end. So right here, this is my my main thing. So I'm going to create a duplication of this. And to do this, all you're going to want to do is right click on the layer, and to add new layers, you just drag and drop them in. And we're going to duplicate this layer. So I'm going to duplicate it, and then I'm going to just keep this one at the bottom so we can look at it later. Now, one thing I want to do, let's say we wanted a DSLR effect. I don't have a very good camera that will blur the background for me, but we can actually get that effect really easy with GIMP. So if we go ahead, let's say we wanted to do that. So the first thing we would need to do is actually cut myself out of this frame. And that's kind of a time-consuming, strenuous process. What we would want to do is go ahead and zoom way in, start down here, and literally cut myself out. Now, I'm not going to sit here and make you guys watch me do this. I've already done this for the most part. So I'm going to zoom out, and let's say theoretically, this isn't the cut we're actually going with, but let's say I cut myself out all the way. What we would want to do is with that selection, we'd hit Control C and Control V. Now over here, we can see we have a new pasted layer. You can make that as a new layer. And then if I disabled this, for example, you could see that new pasted layer. Now that looks absolutely horrible because I just made it on the fly real quick. So what we're going to do, I'm going to go ahead and actually get rid of that for now. And I've already done this properly, so that's what it should look like if we want to spend a little bit more time on it. So now you can see from the background, I have this separate layer of myself. And what we're going to do is go ahead and blur this out real quick. So with the background layer selected, all we would need to do is go over to Filters, Blur, and we're going to go with this one right here. Now this is going to be our dialog for how much a blur effect we want. And you can see as we start raising it, it's blurring that background for us. So it looks like we have an expensive camera, or at least a nice lens. So we can go ahead and add a blur effect. That's looking pretty good. Okay. So now if I go ahead and zoom in to this percent, and we disable, or let's enable this one and disable what we just created, that right there is what we just did. So it's already looking a little bit better, but I think that we could do even better. So let's start manipulating some of these colors. The background, in my opinion, is a little too light. So to go ahead and change colors for things, there's a tool that was very similar to what we were just looking at in Kdenlive. And that would be this blur, not blur. We would go under colors and then we would go to curves. And here we can see a lot of the data for the colors and the lighting in the footage. Just generally, one thing you're going to want to do is select somewhere in the middle of where most of the data is. And then if you move this, this is where you could get lighter and darker. So let's say I wanted to go around here. So that right there is looking a little bit better. So now what we could do is let's go ahead and make it look like we have some nice lighting. So to do this, what we could do is add a new layer. And for this one, we're going to change the mode. We're going to change this to soft light. So if we create a new soft light layer, let's throw this on top real quick. And what color of light do we want? Does anybody in chat have a specific color, kind of hue they would like me to go for in the background? If not, I'm going to select like blue. Let's see. So let's go with this blue. If anybody has another color, just let me know in chat because I'm going to do another color on the other side. So with this blue, what we could do is go over, I think it's here. It's one of these tools. Over here are all your different tools and everything that you could do. So we have our move tool, the rectangle select. We have our free select. Right here is our fuzzy select. So that's similar to a tool that you would see in Photoshop. We have our crop tool. So you can actually crop things out here. We have our eraser right here under the bucket fill. What we're actually going to do is go ahead and add a gradient. Now, when you select these different tools in GIMP, right here, you're going to have a whole bunch of different additional options with that tool or whatever you selected. For this, I'm actually going to keep it as is, which is the foreground to transparent. And applying this to this soft light layer is going to give us a very nice gradient. So you can see if I drag that in there, it makes the background light, but it makes my face a little blue too. So if we pop that in there and then we drop this under myself, you can see now we're manipulating the background colors. So just for a nice little effect, we could go ahead and add another one. And let's switch this to an orange, for example. So you just click on orange here. Let's make it a little more orange. There we go. And then we just do the same thing on the other side. So boom. Now we have a decent light effect, and overall you can see that if I disable that, that's what the blur looks like to the background. It's looking pretty good. And then of course I could modify myself so I don't look so washed out and pale, which is how I naturally look anyways. But to fix me, what we could do is go to the curves again, click where most of the data is, and we can see a lot of it's right here. So we can make me a little bit darker. And then if we go under colors again, we have the color temperature. If you don't know about color temperature, basically if we cool this down or if we go down, it's going to make it warmer or more orange, or we could go up to make it cooler or more blue. So we would just go with maybe that. Okay, and there's a whole bunch of different other colors and effects and things that you could do. For example, if I wanted to adjust the exposure, we We have the black level and the exposure here. So I could drop that down, bring it up, completely wash and blow myself out. But that's just an example of something you could do. So simply cutting myself out, blurring the background, adding two different soft light layers with the gradient colors made my whole setup look completely different than it is. Overall, it's cool colors make you look kind of dead. Yeah. Yeah, here, that's what make me look not as dead and warm myself up. So to do that, you'd go color temperature and you would oh, we want the intended. Oh no, I got the wrong layer selected. That's one thing. You'll make a lot of little issues like that. So color, color temperature, warm myself up so I don't look so dead. And yeah, that's just one example of the photo editing thing that you could do. Now, of course, there's more things you could do. If I go File, New, go ahead and create this. And let's go into some pictures. So if I go into downloads, I'm pretty sure I have a laptop in here. Let's go ahead and throw the Linode logo in there. We might as well. I'm looking for a picture of a laptop. Let's say this laptop right here, this is actually a thumbnail I created for another video. And let's say we wanted to completely change the screen of this laptop. You took a picture of your computer and it just doesn't look good. Maybe there was a little bit of reflection of a light on the screen. It's just not looking right. This personally looks pretty good, but let's say you just wanted to take a screenshot on your computer and add it to the screen of your laptop. Oh, what software is that? I joined a bit late. Sorry, I just saw that message. This is GIMP. It is the GNU image manipulation program, and it is a wonderful alternative to something like Photoshop. This is free and open source. Photoshop is not. Now, let's say you took a picture of your laptop and you wanted to replace the screen with a screenshot that you've taken, which is like the perfect screenshot. It'll look really good. Getting it in here, especially if the laptop is at like an angle, may seem like a daunting task, but with GIMP, it's actually pretty easy. So the first thing I'm going to do is get this. This is going to be what we're going to use for the screen on this laptop. So I'm just going to roughly put it at the right size. So maybe about there. Hit enter. Now, obviously, this does not look natural in the slightest. Now, there's actually a tool. If we go over here to that scale tool, which I just used to kind of shrink this down a bit, and hold down the click, and over here we have more options. So the one we're going to use, we have a 3D transform. So this is one that's cool. So you can, it's on a axis, and you can go ahead and move this around however you want. This is one way to go ahead and get the effect that you want, but there's actually a tool that's a little bit easier than this. So if I go ahead, Control Z, and let's go ahead and select the perspective tool. What this is going to do is kind of the same thing. It's going to allow us to drag and manipulate the individual corners. So what we're going to do, I'm just going to simply drag these into the corners like this. Boom, boom, boom. It's not perfect. Before I hit enter, I'm going to zoom in quite a bit. So let's say 400% or so. And then we could go up here and just perfectly put it over what we're trying to do. So let's put that there. We'll put this here. We'll scroll down, put this in this corner, and go over and then up, and put that in this corner. So now if I go ahead and zoom out and hit enter, there we go. That looks like, kinda. There's a little bit of tweaking I could do to make it look a little bit better, but that looks pretty close to what that would look like if that was the screen of this laptop. Now there's other little things you could do to make it a little bit more natural looking. For example, if I this is the layer, so if I disable and enable it, you can see it. If I enable this, right click on it, you could do alpha to selection. And what this is going to do is going to select the active pixels within this layer. And then what we could do is over here under select, we could go ahead and grow this layer. So let's say we want to grow it by 2 pixels. So grow the selection by 2 pixels. And then if we go ahead and zoom way into it, you can see it's slightly 2 pixels out. Now, what I'm going to do is just add a little bit of a gray background to make it kind of sink into the screen a little bit more. So to do this, I'm going to go create a new layer, One thing, it's on the previous mode, which is soft light, which for this is not what we want. We want normal, hit OK, and then let's go ahead and change this color to a gray, which about there is looking pretty good. So hit OK, and now we are going to go ahead and switch from the gradient tool to the bucket fill. So let's go ahead and fill in this new layer. So now if we zoom out here, it's grayed out. We go select, go to none, and let's go ahead and just drag this under. There we go. And now it's kind of hard to see on stream, but if you do look closely, we do have a slight gray border going around it, which just little fine details like that that add the slight sync and a little bit more realistic features if you're going to be doing photo manipulation like this. Now, one little thing I could show you is how to make drop shadows. Drop shadows are always fun. So I'm going to go ahead and get this Linode logo, pop it over here. I'm going to switch back to my scale tool and then go ahead and drag this down so it's a little bit more manageable. And to create drop shadows, we're going to kind of be using the same sort of effect that we used. Here, I'm going to add a white background and put this over here. We're going to be using kind of the same thing we just did to make that kind of divot in the screen. So what we'd want to do is get our image layer, and you can move this around, position it if you want to. If I go and re-enable, what layer is this? Oh, this is an old project. Sorry. If I go ahead and select this, right-click on the layer, and go to Alpha 2 Selection, just like we did before, and select. And let's go ahead and grow this out a little bit. So if I hit grow, and let's say we want it to be, we want the drop shadow to be a little bit more intense. So we're going to grow the active selection of the alpha or the active pixels of this. Hit OK. And now if we go ahead and zoom in real quick, you can kind of see the selection around this Linode logo. So what we could do from here, create a new layer, hit OK. Oh, sorry. We're going to want to create a new transparent layer. That's one thing you got to watch out for. New layer, mode, we want this to be transparent. Or actually, we want normal, and then we want the fill width to be transparency. Hit OK. And now what we could do is let's switch this to black. So we just go all the way down, hit OK. And now if we paint bucket in here, we've filled in that layer. So now if I go out, you can see it's all black. So let's select go none. And now what we could do is put this under the Linode logo. So currently all it's done is added a black border. That's one way. If we want to just add a black border around something, we could stop and we'd be done. But we want to make this look like a shadow. So to do this, what we're going to do is another blur, just like we did in the background in the last picture. We could go blur, this one right here. And let's bump this up a little bit so you can kind of see the effect that it's doing. As we get this more and more blurry, it's looking a little bit more and more like a shadow. I'm going to go with about here for now, hit OK, and then what we could do is just grab our selection tool here. If I go ahead and just select this, you can see now I can move around this bottom layer, which is a blurred version or a blurred black version of the top layer. Now let's say I wanted the shadow to be down here. We could just drop that there. Now that doesn't really look too good, so what we could do is go over here with the layer selected. You can see opacity right here, and simply drag that, and now it's looking a bit more like a shadow. It's looking pretty good. So we could get the selection, and you can reposition this wherever you want the sun theoretically shining down on it. So that's just one way to go ahead and make a drop shadow layer. So that's basically it when it comes to the creative software that I wanted to actually give you guys live demos for. We had Kdenlive. For those of you who joined late, you'll be able to watch a rerun. Sorry about that. But Kdenlive is a fantastic video editor. Again, this is kind of in reference to this challenge right there. Create a video tutorial for your favorite Linode Cloud product. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with Linode, they are a sponsor. If we go up here, build a discourse form using Linode, you get your $100 credit if you go ahead and click right here. and you can go ahead and try out Linode, play around with it. A Discourse Form is a free and open source form software. So if I go to, let's say, Mozilla Form, a lot of big companies use it. So this right here on the Mozilla Forms, if we go to their Discourse server, this is an example of a company actively using this form software. So this is what that is. Now, this is, you don't have to make the video about that specifically, but if you're already doing that challenge anyway, that might be a good way to kind of get 2-in-1, is to create a video on creating that. And I do have a separate video on this. If we go back up to building a Linode Discourse form, if you go to this tutorial, so if I open that up in the new tab, you can see this is the one I created. Dude looks a little familiar here. You can watch that tutorial. And you don't, like I said, you don't have to use the Discourse Forms thing. It's right here. This is my Linode dashboard. So I'm just going to show you some of the options that you have when it comes to actually picking out what you want to do here on Linode. So these are some things I'm actively running like all the time, but just go over Create Linode. And when it comes to their products, I'm pretty sure it's in reference to their marketplace. Now, these are a lot of easy kind of one-click installers for various cloud services. So right here, this is the Discourse option. So you would select that, you'd go through the process, it will do the installation stuff for you, but there is still a lot of configuration and setting up that you're going to need to do. Additionally, we have like creating a little Minecraft server you could do through here. You can launch a WordPress instance through here. There is truly a lot. You can create your own GitLab, which is an alternative to, it's like a self-hosted GitHub, basically. You have Jenkins. There's a lot of stuff here. We have a LAMP. Let's see, what's something that we could actually spin up really easy? We have a VS Code server. This one is really fun. Hopefully this all works out. I've only done this one time. So right here we have the VS Code server. We're going to set a password for our login UI. So I'm going to type something in here real quick. What we're going to do is spin up our very own VS Code server. So you can connect to this application just about anywhere in the world. Now, your email for configuration, if required, I'm going to go ahead. This is my business email, so I'm not really concerned if people know what it is. So there we go. And now we have our limited sudo user. If you are at all familiar with Linux, you have your root user, which that is can basically do anything and everything with no issues. And a limited sudo user is generally your user profile. So for this, I'm going to go put in my name, and then I'm going to put in a password here. Basically, using limited sudo users makes everything a little bit safer, because when you're doing anything that changes the core of the system or installs applications or anything like that, it's going to be like you're going to need sudo privileges. What's your password? So then at that point, you know that you're doing something that theoretically could mess up something else. But depending, if it's just an application installing or update, you're going to be fine. Okay, so would you like to disable login over SSH? No, actually, yeah, we'll say yeah. And we have token API, we have domains. We're not going to use domains. Would you like a free certificate? We're going to say no for now. Region, this is just whatever's closest to you. I'm unfortunately closest to California. Here, this is your Linode plan. So if we go over to shared CPU, you can see it's as cheap as $5 a month. If you use the link we talked about earlier, which is over here in challenges right here, you'll get a $100 credit. I'm pretty sure it's for 60 days, so you can go ahead and play around with this as much as you really would like. So we have our Nanode 1 gigabyte. If you want to pay for it, or if you want to continue using Linode, it's as low as $5 a month to have your very own 1 gig server. So from there, you have your label. VS Code server US West is okay. I'm going to create my root password. Like I said, I've only done this once before. Hopefully it works. So let's go ahead without all these domains and everything. Let's create the node. And it theoretically should just go ahead and spin up our very own VS Code server, which is nice because then you can, if you've set up all the domain name and get the SSL certificate, you can go ahead and log into this anywhere in the world that there is an internet connection. So right here, one cool thing about Linode, it's provisioning. So if we launch the Lish console, we can actually see a terminal utility of exactly what it is doing. So you can see it's booting up, it's connecting. Now this might take a sec. So we are getting close to the end of stream. I'm going to let this finish up and see if it worked. But if you guys have any questions at all, I'm completely open. I'm paying attention to the chat. If you have any questions about creating content on YouTube, creating content for work, what you should do in any situations, I'll do my best to answer any questions. And if you don't have any questions, that's fine as well. So we're going to go ahead and wait for this. Cool colors, nice. Thanks for explaining so beautifully. Thank you for watching. I do appreciate it. We're just waiting for this Linode to spin up. So there we go. And it's cool because you could actually watch what it's doing. Basically, these one-click installers through Linode are scripts that will go through the entire process of installing everything. So I'm not going to create a new Linode, but for example, if I went back to this marketplace, there's a lot more options. Yacht is something that's really cool if you're trying to learn Docker. I might spin up one of these because it's super easy to go ahead and spin these up and go ahead and play around with them. We have various game servers, so you have CSGO, Jenkins isn't a game server. We have a Rust that you could go ahead and get up and running. Now, if we go over here, this Lish console has our login. So we're going to see if this just worked out of the gate. Now, I didn't set up domains or anything like that, so if it doesn't, I wouldn't be too surprised, but we'll see. So I'm just going to travel to the IP address. Welcome to Nginx. So it did get mostly installed. Now we're probably going to have to figure this out together. So VS Code server, there's probably a port. Network storage, settings. What port is it under? Thank you for using Nginx. So Google will be our friend. VS Code server default port. So port 22, that should work. How do I specify? No, tunneled remote port, I'm afraid. Look at me on Overstack Flow trying to figure something out live. Okay, I'm probably not going to be able to figure that out right now. But that's how you basically spin up Linode instances. Something I know will work without setting up the domain and figuring out what the port is properly. Port, maybe it's 4. I don't think this is going to work. Here, 443? No, bad request. Okay, a better example, if we go ahead and create Linode, and we create our own instance of Yacht. So right here, if we go over to Yacht, this right here is a GUI for Docker, which is really nice. So we go like that. And with Docker, it'll make launching things like those VS Code servers and all that a lot easier. So admin at Yacht local is fine. Yacht theme default is fine. We have our image. We're going to go with the latest version of Debian, California, shared CPU. For Docker, you might want more than a gigabyte because chances are you're going to be running multiple instances of things, but that right there should be fine. So let's go like that. And now that should be good. So this one, I know the port is actually listed. So if we go Yacht Docker port, we should be able to find it. Yep, see, it's port 8000. So with this loaded up, you can install this via Docker as well. If you already have a Docker instance, you could go ahead and get this fired up. So let's see the process of this. Let's get rid of this Lish console. I wish that would have worked just right away. I know if I spent more than 10 minutes or so, I could get it up and running, but that doesn't make for good content here on the stream. Like I said, if you guys have any other questions, I am more than happy to answer them. We're going to be ending off here pretty soon. Ooh, we're booting into Debian GNU/Linux. But Yacht is a really cool tool here. You can see the different templates. If we go under templates, templates explained, this is going to give you all your different or app containers that you could go ahead and easily put a one-click install. So technically, you could use Linode one-click install of Yacht to make your very own self-hosted Docker instance of various one-click installers. It's really a pretty cool thing. And like I said, for those doing the challenges, right up here is a through Linode creating your own discourse form. Where did it go? Create a R filter. There's a lot of cool stuff in here. There it is. Build a discourse form using Linode. That's one option. We're waiting for this to go ahead and boot up. So if you went ahead and created this Yacht instance and kind of explained the process as you're going about it and recorded it, that's where this would come and create a video tutorial for your favorite Linode Cloud product. So we're just waiting for this to boot up. I'm excited for this one. If we go back one, make sure we have the right port. It's 8000, and when this boots up, just like this, we should be able to go ahead, get this IP address, and then travel to the port 8000. There we go. Okay, so now we have our Yacht. I accidentally copied over, so I'm gonna have to go Yacht setup and get that email address. There it is, Yacht local. So theoretically, y'all could hack this if you want to, if you're quick enough, because the password is just pass login. Oh, actually, I think it's haha. You can't hack it because I changed it. Haha. But there we are. You're now in your self-hosted Yacht dashboard. So one thing you could do, you have Yacht, which is a Docker instance that's running. If we go over to templates here, no templates. So what we can do is add, and we're going to go ahead and add this one right here. It's the self-hosted Pro templates. So if we go ahead and give that a copy, paste it where the URL is, and we're just going to grab this for the title, submit. And now this template for Self-Hosted Pro, which is going to be a huge list of various Docker instances. So if I go ahead and open that up, you can see we can now launch other services. Here's the code server. So it's probably going to work if we do it through here. So deploy, we have the code server, image looks proper, so we'll continue. We have our networking information, so I'm going to bridge this. And okay, so this is the port right here. So I bet you if we get this port and we go over back to Linode and go to the one that we already created, I bet you that's going to let us log in. So I'm going to put this port in here, and VS Code Server West, let's copy that IP address and paste that in. And theoretically, I'm going to let that load and create this one over here, just in case if that doesn't work. We have code server, config. It's really easy to launch Docker instances here. So if I just continue from there, you can go ahead and switch all this if you'd want to. For TZ, password, sudo password, you could change all these. Proxy domain. Yeah, this is probably not going to... I don't want to go through the whole process of setting up domains. So we'll skip that for now. But if we go down to something else that I know we don't need to set up a domain name for, such as we have Guacamole, which is really cool for remote accessing of things. Jellyfin is a wonderful self-hosted media server. We have Let's Encrypt. We have Minetest, which is a alternative to Minecraft. We have Nginx. We have OpenSSH. We have Pi-hole, which is a network-wide ad blocker. QBitTorrent, Radar, uTorrent, all kinds of stuff. We have Swag, TeamSpeak servers. You can have transmission. One of them is Libre Speed. So if I do Libre and go down to, a lot of these are going to be called Libre. So I'm going to do Speed. Libre Speed. So this is an example of one that's pretty easy to get up and going. What this is going to be is your very own self-hosted internet speed test. So for the port, let's just say 200, container 200. Let's create that, put that there, and deploy this instance. Now, it will take a sec because it's actually downloading the data from Docker. And there we go. So now if we go to LibreSpeed, the web UI, oh, none of my demos are working. At the end anyways. All the other stuff worked pretty good. Web UI. It's probably because of I've selected a bad port. Oh well. But here, once you do get it up and running, you can start, stop, restart, kill. If I want to remove this instance, I just go like that, remove it. Yacht is still running, which is fantastic. So let's go to templates, self-hosted pro. And there's a lot more stuff here you can run. You have Jellyfin, Homer, which is really cool. This is a way to set up a self-hosted kind of bookmark dashboard. So if we created this real quick, this one has at least default setup port. So should I need to set network mode? I don't think so. Continue. All the config files are good. Continue. Deploy. So it's really easy to deploy things. I'm just happen to be picking bad examples. You can kind of see it doing stuff in the background here. So now Homer, if I go to the web UI for this, it's going to have the Homer dashboard. And then if I go down here, I could always figure out where these configuration files are. So if I go to the config YML, this is where it's located. So then I would use a SSH terminal or something like that to go ahead and modify my Homer dashboard. So just some stuff you could do with Linode. With that, I am going to be ending soon. So I do thank you all for watching. I'm a little over my hour. I was just playing around with some of the things on Linode. So I hope you enjoy it. I hope you go ahead and try out a couple of these. Hope you make some tutorials, use some of the software we discussed today. Other than that, Major League Hacking. I do hope. Oh, sorry. I'm checking something real quick. Twitch. There we are. I'm making sure everything is good. Perfect. Yeah, so yeah, we're running a bit over. Very last chance if you have any questions to get in. Yeah, again, the applications I discussed today, if you missed some of it, we took a live look at Kdenlive, which is a fantastic free and open source video editor. And then we looked at Audacity, which is a free and open source audio editing interface where you could apply compressors and things like that. If you're looking for a wonderful screen recorder, OBS Studio is by far the very best option that you can go for. And then last but not least, if you're looking for a wonderful way to go ahead and make thumbnails and edit images, I would highly, highly recommend GIMP. So with that, I hope you all have an absolutely beautiful day. And this is the end of the stream, or the end of this event. There will be more events today. About 50 minutes will be the next one. So with all that, I hope you have a beautiful day. And goodbye. We'll see when it ends.